I'm a Saints fan. I've always been a Saints fan. I was a Saints fan when the Saints were bad, and I've been a Saints fan ever since they drafted Drew Brees. Let me tell you, ever since they drafted Drew Brees, to me, every year is a potential Super Bowl year. You know what I'm talking about. How you doing? I am Eric Garcia, certified financial planner and financial advisor. And what in the heck does being a Saints fan have to do with money? Well, not much, really. However, there's a lesson here. First, I'll say this. Never bet on the Saints. Probably not a great idea. So here's the lesson. There's something called home country bias. What home country bias says is that we tend to favor companies and products that come from our region or from our country of origin. So where we live influences our everyday decisions. I'm in New Orleans. I'm a Saints fan. The Saints are going to win the Super Bowl every year. There's no question about it. Part of it is familiarity, right? We're more comfortable with the things we're familiar with. This is fascinating. Check this out from an investment standpoint. Southern investors are 26% more likely to invest in energy than the rest of the country. Why? Because so much energy comes from where? The Gulf of Mexico. West Coast investors are 20% more likely to invest in tech versus Midwesterner and Southerner investors. Why? Because a lot of tech companies are where? Out west. East Coast investors are up to 23% more likely to invest in financials. Why? So many financial companies are located in the Northeast. And finally, Midwesterners are up to 22% more likely to invest in industrials. Why? So much industry and manufacturing is located in the Midwest. Now, some of this might have to do with the fact that because there's such a high concentration of these companies in these particular industries, people's retirement plans may be tied to their individual company's stock. But regardless, those numbers are staggering. So this is what we call home country bias, right? We're going to invest in the things that we're more familiar with. Let me give you an example of home country bias. Let's meet with a potential client, and this individual is a commercial fisherman. They were understandably uncomfortable with the stock market. It was unknown to them. So here's the hypothetical scenario that I proposed to them. You have $100,000 to invest. You have two options. You can either invest it in a new startup commercial fishing operation in Southeast Louisiana, or you can take the $100,000 and invest it in the stock market. Let's say the S&P 500, which is a measure of the stock market that we track and index. And the question was, which would you pick? And understandably, they picked the startup commercial fishing operation. It's familiar, right? Home country bias, home team bias. My next question to them was, what are the risks that you face or that this new venture, this commercial fishing operation faces? What are the things that could potentially cause the business to fail? And we were discussing, number one, this was on the heels of the BP oil spill. So obviously an oil spill could impact that type of business. Any other environmental disaster could impact that business. A receding coastline, right, can impact a commercial fishing operation. A hurricane can impact this type of business. So there's a lot of risk associated. When we looked at the stock market, we started talking about different risks. And there are risks that exist. However, historically, we know that the stock market will perform well over time. For example, on a 20-year rolling period starting in December 2017, going back 20 years, the S&P 500 averaged 7.2% per year. Those aren't bad numbers. Yes, there's risks involved. Those risks can be managed. The point here is how home country bias clouded this individual's investing decisions. Home country bias isn't necessarily bad, but it's something that you have to be conscious of. When I draft my fantasy football team, I have to be conscious of the fact that I think that every Saints player is going to outscore every other player in fantasy football. When you make investing decisions, you just have to be conscious of these biases so that you can make the best financial decision. Sometimes it's good to meet with a third party, to meet with a financial planner. Find me on my website, www.plan-wisely.com. Send me a message. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Thanks for listening. Who get?